You are watching and listening to the Indy Drills podcast, where we talk about defensive back play coverage and all things DBs here. Happy to have you here with me. The Indy Drills podcast is sponsored by my book, 101 DB Tips. Version 2 has just come out and has promptly sold out. It's the ultimate DB reference guide. Have a link to it down in the description. Level up your play with that. This is your first time here, or you haven't had a chance to do it yet already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell if you're watching on YouTube so that you don't miss out on a next Indy Drills podcast. Otherwise, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever you are using to stream the Indy Drills podcast. Would greatly appreciate it. Also, hey, for you folks listening to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that, if you like this podcast and the information being given out, you can really help me out by giving this thing a very, very good rating and dropping a comment on there too as well. Let's continue to grow the Indy Drills podcast. All right, let's get into some things here. What is the latest in the news? It's NFL free agency season, and that means guys get the bag. So we've got a bunch of defensive backs moving around, talking about a few of the most recent signings that have come around. We've got DJ Reed, former Jet, now has signed a 3-year contract with the Detroit Lions. 3 years, $48 million for DJ Reed. So for all of you undersized defensive backs out there that are worrying about how big you are and, am I going to be able to make it as a 5'8" or a 5'9" cornerback? DJ Reed is your guy. He just made $48 million, not $480 million, $48 million over 3 years. And just doing that with grit and being really on his technique. And the guy has a mentality that is a never quit. And that's what you need to have. If you don't fit the dimensions that they would like to see as a defensive back, you know what they're looking for out there. They're looking for 6-foot corners. But just because you're not 6 feet doesn't mean that it's all over for you. If you have determination, and the determination is backed by your willingness to prepare and learn the game and be on top of your technique and all of the other things that you have control over, DJ Reed has just showed you that can turn yourself into a pretty healthy payday. Other guys moving around, Charvarius Ward, who was a really good corner for the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago, spent last year with Tennessee and did pretty well there, has now parlayed that into a 3-year, $54 million contract with the Indianapolis Colts. Then we've got Isaiah Rodgers, also a former Colt who just finished the season with the world champion Philadelphia Eagles. He just signed with the Minnesota Vikings, 2 years, $15 million for Isaiah Rodgers. This guy is a guy that trains with me in the offseason, Javon Holland. Very happy for him. The former Dolphin is now inked with the New York Giants, 3 years, $45.3 million contract. One of the top and up-and-coming free safeties in the game of football right now, a guy with a wide range of skills. And so very happy to see Javon Holland landing in the Big Apple and picking up $45 million to go with it. Cameron Bynum, he is also an Indianapolis Colt. He is picking up a 4-year contract, $60 million there. Mike Hughes agreed to a 3-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. Mike Ford signs a 2-year contract also with the Atlanta Falcons. Nate Hobbs, a really gritty player, used to be with the Las Vegas Raiders, almost called them the Los Angeles Raiders. I'm like 2-3 cities removed. But he signs 4 years, $48 million. And I also want to congratulate my son, Marco Wilson. He has re-inked with the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's going to enter into his 5th season in the NFL. Really happy to have him rejoin with the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that if they get all their players back can really make some noise this year. So very happy to see that happening for Marco. A lot of work has been done there, a lot of adversity he's had to overcome. And he's there another season with the Bengals. I really enjoyed what he did there and looking forward to seeing what's going to happen this season. But that's it in terms of current news here. This is going to be a short and crisp, not necessarily short. I always say that short and then we end up talking about a whole bunch of things. But that's it for, the current news that's out there in terms of defensive backs. It is free agent signing season. And so you're going to see guys moving around. A lot of big contracts out there. Darius Slay is now going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. As you guys know, he's one of my favorite DBs out there. He's sliding over. He's now going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, staying in the state of Pennsylvania, but joining what is always a very good defense. So it's going to be interesting to see what he's able to do over there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking forward to seeing Darius Slade there. All right, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is we just had the NFL Combine, and in the last Indy Drills podcast, I talked about all of the fast 40 times that guys were running, and we're seeing this each and every year. The 40-yard dash times are starting to get faster and faster and faster. One of the big reasons for that is guys are more prepared for the 40. They know exactly how to run them in terms of, your start and then how you maintain your speed. There's a lot more training and information out there on how to run a fast 40-yard dash. And so, therefore, we are seeing better performances in terms of time. However, that does not necessarily mean a guy is going to be a good football player. And I'm talking for all of you guys now that are in the middle of your off-season training. Yes, you do need to train physically to be prepared for the season. You want to be faster than last year. You want to be stronger than last year. You want to be quicker than last year. I understand the whole physical training part of it. If you're playing this game, you have to be into that. However, I will say this. If you are not spending time getting knowledge, that speed is going to be for nothing. I've been around guys that are extremely fast, 4.2 guys. Been around those type of guys, low 4.3 guys. And yes, when you put them on a field and you run them in a straight line, something, especially for something that they've trained for, if they have a really good track background, they're going to come through that line and they're going to have a fast time, and they ran fast. But I've been around a number of guys who could do that. They could show the right thing on the clock for coaches. But then when they actually get on the field and it's time to play, they're not 4.3. They're not 4.2 anymore. And it's because they lacked the football IQ. They either don't really understand the defenses that they're playing in and where they need to be, or they also don't understand what it is the offenses are doing, and so they're slow to react. And even when they're running in a straight line, since they're not sure about where they are supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing, those guys don't come anywhere close to the times that they ran when they had a clock on them. And the best example I can give you of that, the best analogy I could give for you is picture yourself being in a hotel, a rather large hotel with a long hallway that's about a good 70, 80 yards. And you're going to get down there and you're going to blast off out of your stance and you're going to run a 40-yard dash time. You're going to run pretty good in that scenario. All right. You're going to get out and you're going to run really, really well. Or maybe you just picture yourself being at the combine at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. And you got a clear path down there. The cones are set up. You see where the finish line is. You're going to get down in your stance and you're going to take off and you're going to run full speed. You're going to probably run as good a time as you could. If you're a 4.4 guy, you'll run 4.4. If you're a 4.5 guy, you'll run a 4.5. If you're a 4.2 guy, you'll probably run a 4.2, especially if you've been training for it. You're going to run the fastest 40 you could possibly run. Now, what happens if they turned off all the lights in Lucas Oil Stadium and it was pitch black in there and you had to get down on the line and run full speed? Chances are you're not going to run your fastest time. Chances are you're going to run the slowest 40 time you've ever run. Why? Because you're not sure what's in front of you. You're not sure what it is, where you're going and what you're doing. There's a chance something could be in your way, whatever. No one is going to run full speed in the dark. I'm sorry. Unless something is chasing you and you hear some kind of a beast or a dog or an animal behind you, in which case you would just take your chances and run full speed and hope for the best. In most scenarios, when it is completely dark in front of you, you're not running full speed. You know what the darkness is when you're out on a football field? Your lack of knowledge. If you don't know how to play the defense, if you don't know what the offense is doing, and you have not adequately prepared yourself up here in the brain, you've not developed an IQ, you will not be as fast as you trained yourself to be in the off season. Too many guys go into their seasons having not improved their knowledge significantly enough from the past season, and then they're disappointed when all of the new physical heights that they reached, all of the PRs, all of the bigger bench presses and the faster 40 times, and if you ran track, your faster 100 time, 200 meter time, did not turn into better play for you. It's because you did not spend enough time acquiring knowledge, understanding defense, and understanding offenses and the way that they attack the defenses that you're running. You are now in the darkness, and you cannot use all of that speed that you trained yourself for. That's why I tell you guys, you've got to spend a significant part of your off season getting in some IQ improvements. All right. You don't know all the defenses, right? You know that. Some of you guys don't even know your own team's defense. You don't totally understand what it is offenses are doing. You don't understand what they're trying to do in each formation. You don't understand what the splits mean. You don't really know how to read a quarterback. You don't really understand what teams are trying to do to you on certain downs and distances. You don't know how the play calling changes, depending on where they are on the field, whether they're in the red zone or in the middle of the field or coming out of their own end zone. You don't understand these things. And you didn't really make the effort in the offseason to try and understand those things. A big part of you being able to move full speed, anticipate things, and get yourself in between the receiver and the quarterback to get your hands on the football is going to rely on what you put in this part of your body. Not entirely what happens from the neck down, but what happens up here. You have to have a football IQ so that you can move full speed out on that field and make full use of what it is you have trained your body to do. Your mind controls the body. If your mind does not have what it needs, your body is not going to be able to max out. I find the need to really impress that upon guys each and every year. I train young high school football players. I train college football guys when they're coming out trying to get ready for the NFL. And of course, I train professional athletes, guys in the NFL, the Canadian League, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The ones who really benefit in their next season are the ones who have devoted themselves not only to the physical training, but also the IQ. All right. And that's why I push things like 101 DB tips, like my All Eyes DB Camp members area, because I'm really trying to feed that part of you. All right. I'm really just trying to get you to understand football so that you can anticipate plays coming and so that you can run full speed and you're running in the light, not in the darkness. So it's not just I'm trying to peddle a book that I'm selling to you, or it's not just, I'm trying to get you to sign up for a members area to make some money. It is about trying to get you to reach your absolute maximum. And I can promise this to you. If you don't embrace the mental part of this game, you will not reach your full potential. You'll just be a really good athlete that's out there in the football field, and occasionally you'll make a great play. A lot more times you're going to make mistakes, and your coach will eventually get frustrated with you. Fans will definitely get frustrated because having all of those physical gifts can now turn into being a negative. Oh, he's so fast. He's so strong. He can jump so high, but he won't make any plays. And now, fans and coaches will turn on you even faster if you didn't have those gifts because they're not understanding why it is you can't make these plays. So you guys owe it to yourself. Wherever you can get the knowledge to improve your IQ, go get it. Go get it. Doesn't necessarily have to be with me. I highly recommend it. But even if it's not, go improve your IQ and how you understand the game of football so that you can use all of that speed and strength that you are gaining. All right. I think I have made my point on that. Don't be running in the darkness when the 2025 season comes your way. All right. Time for the mailbag. And as always, I'd like to point this out to you guys. I love taking you guys' questions. One of the best ways for that question, for me to read your question out on the next Indy Drills podcast, is to just respond to this podcast with your own question right here in the comments section. Outside of that, feel free to send me an email to cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. We'll be more than happy to answer that question for you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. All right. Listen very closely. If you ask me, if you ask a question here and I use it on the next Indy Drills podcast, if I take your question from this comment section, if you're watching on YouTube, if I take your question and I use it on the next Indy Drills podcast, I will send you a free digital copy of my ebook, 101 DB Tips. How about that? All right. So let's drop those questions down in the comment section because I know you guys have them. All right. If you're playing defensive back and you are not an all-pro, you definitely have some questions out there. There's some things that you wonder about. Don't be shy about it. There are no dumb questions. Drop them down in the comment section. And again, if I use your comment, I will be more than happy to send you an ebook copy of 101 DB tips. Get that sent out to you. All right. So here's my question today. It's from Eric, and this is Delaware. Eric in Delaware is asking, I continue to have problems turning my head around because I am really scared to do that when I'm running down the field in coverage with a wide receiver. What are some things that I can do to help me with that fear of turning my head around? All right, Eric, very good question. You're not alone. First of all, you're not alone in this problem that you have. This is a problem for a lot of defensive backs. I can't even say it's just a problem for young defensive backs. If you guys watch enough NFL football games, you'll see guys that will just refuse to turn their head around. And, fans get pissed off about it because, what they're doing more and more nowadays is the quarterbacks and receivers are well aware of this fear or inability for defensive backs to turn their head around on a play, and they will throw a line drive right by your head, right into the receiver's hands. And that can be super frustrating because the receivers have gotten hip too about what, defensive backs do. They'll sit there looking at the wide receiver's eyes, wait for the eyes to get big, and then watch for the hands to go up, and then they'll try to throw a hand in the receiver's hands and dig the ball out. So you'll see a lot of receivers now training to have what is known as late hands. They will have a ball thrown to them and they'll run and then just throw the hands up at the last second to snag the ball in and fail to give the DB a cue that he can use to be able to throw his hands in there and break the pass up. So they're plotting against your ability or inability to turn your head around and find the football. You accurately described what the problem is in your email to me, Eric, and that is you have this fear. But let's talk about where that fear comes from. 9.5 times out of 10, that fear is coming from the fact that you have not had enough reps running down the field and judging a football. You do not have enough confidence in your ability to judge a football that's being thrown in your direction and your ability to make a play on the ball effectively to stop the wide receiver from getting it. So what do we need to do? You need to have more reps at running down the field on like a fade route or even a post route, but most likely a fade route because that's where most of your problems are coming from, and turning your head around as the ball has been thrown, judging the flight of the ball, and making the catch. Now, I don't know your entire background. Based on what you're telling me, you probably have never been on the offensive side of the ball. You never were a wide receiver, because if you were, this would not be a problem for you. You might have a different kind of problem, but a fear of looking for the ball and catching it should never have been a problem for you if you had played wide receiver, all right? So now you're going to have to do a little bit of type of wide receiver training. So I recommend that you have a lot of reps. This is the thing that you're going to focus on because it can be a very, very big problem for you. So let's start getting some practice in you sliding through like you're playing press on a wide receiver. You can actually have one there in front of you or not. It doesn't matter. In fact, sometimes it's probably better if you don't have that wide receiver in front of you, because we want to make the focus on you getting downfield and turning your head around and making the catch. So pretend there's a receiver in front of you and you're using your kick slide at 45 degrees. You plant and then you're running down the field. Pretend you're running down the field with the wide receiver and you have a friend or a quarterback throw a ball to you and you turn your head around, judge the ball, and make a catch. You might struggle with this early on, but the more and more reps you take at doing this, the better you're going to get at it. And as you get better at that, your confidence in this is going to rise. Here's the other thing you need to do. You have to practice doing this in a type of a blind ball situation. That means you're going to run for a while. The quarterback's going to release the ball, and halfway towards you is when the quarterback or someone else is going to yell ball, and you're going to have to turn your head around. You're going to see the ball late, and then you're going to have to make a decision on where that ball is and judge the ball late and make a catch. Why are you doing this? Because that is the kind of situation that you will find yourself in the most as you are playing. You're going to see the ball late. The receiver typically sees the ball before us because he's going to get his head around before you. We're running down the field, making sure that he's not running another route. Okay, we're trying to make sure that it's not a comeback or a stop route or he's trying to get around us to the post. That means our eyes are staying on the wide receiver longer, and then when we turn our head around, the ball is closer to us. That's one of the things that causes fear in defensive backs. You're afraid that right when you turn your head, the ball is going to pass by your head into the receiver's hands. Or you're going to turn your head late, the ball is going to be too close for you to make an accurate assessment of where the ball is. You're going to misjudge it, and it's going to go into the wide receiver's hands. The way to alleviate this is to practice that happening to you and learn how to judge the ball late. And it's just simple as taking reps doing it. Have a quarterback throw the ball and tell him to just yell out ball after he's thrown it so that you see the ball late. You need more and more reps off of that. Also practice getting your head around earlier, okay? So as you take those kick slide steps and you start running down the field, start practicing turning your head around at 10 yards. Then maybe you start turning your head around at around 7 or 8. And then you do a few where you turn your head around at 5. That's going to seem super early to you, but sometimes you're going to face a quarterback that throws the ball earlier than another quarterback. And you're going to pick that up in your film study. You're going to realize that this guy throws the ball sooner when he's throwing the fade than the other guy. And you want to be able to practice that, because if you're just used to turning your head around all the time at 10 yards or 12 yards, because that's what you've practiced over and over, when you have to do that in a game, it's going to seem very odd for you to do that. So you practice it at all different levels. Getting the head around at 5. Practice getting your head around at about 7 or 8 yards. Practice getting your head around at about 10 or 12 yards. So you're prepared to do that no matter who you are going against. But to boil it all down for you, Eric, the way you're going to alleviate this problem is getting practice doing it. Practice getting the head around. Practice seeing the ball in flight. Practice seeing the ball being late. Seeing the ball coming in late to you and making the proper reaction to the ball. And high pointing the ball, that means getting your hands up and out away from your body. Practice it like that receiver is right next to your hip. So you're not going to be doing the over-the-shoulder catches where the receiver can take the ball from you. You're not trying to let the ball get into your body where the receiver can jump over you and take the ball away. Remember, all they do are ball drills over and over all day. So they will have no problem extending their arms to take the ball away from you. You've got to also learn how to catch that way. Practice over and over, extending your hands away from your body to catch the football. That's going to help you with this problem that you have. So this is one of those things, Eric, where you're just going to have to rep it out. Through the reps, you get more comfortable. As you get more comfortable, you get more confident. And the more confidence you get, it will now alleviate that fear that you have of turning your head around. You start doing this in practice and making plays, you'll feel even much better about it. Now when you get into games, you turn your head around. And I'm telling you, this one little simple change that you make can turn a 1 interception season into a 5 or 6 interception season. I've seen guys turn into a double-digit interception guy just because they learned how to get their head around and get the football, attack the football, instead of just trying to attack the receiver's hands all the time, which, a lot of times leads to penalties. You make incidental contact with the wide receiver, and now you're just getting flags. High school referees are more apt to throw flags in those situations than any of the other levels that I'm talking about. So it is in your best interest to learn how to turn your head around and make a play. That's another good reason for you to learn how to do that. All right, Eric, appreciate the question coming in. And again, all of you guys listening here, go ahead and drop your questions in. There are no dumb questions, no silly questions. Get them in. Use the comment section on YouTube. If you're watching this on Anchor for Spotify, you do have the ability to ask a question on the podcast that you're watching right now. So go ahead and hit that. You can ask your question there. Otherwise, you can send an email to cwilson@alleyesdbcamp.com. And again, if I use your question on the next Indy Drills podcast, I will send you a free copy of my book, 101 DB Tips. The ebook will be sent to you of 101 DB Tips. So looking forward to answering some questions for you guys there. But Eric, out in Delaware, really appreciate that question. You probably helped a bunch of guys with that here. All right. Moving on to the final part of the Indy Drills podcast. We are going to talk about 5 of the most common mistakes that defensive backs make, and we're going to try to eliminate some of those for you. So I'll give you some tips on, I'm going to let you know what those mistakes are, and then I'm going to give you some tips to trying to avoid some of the most common mistakes, 5 of the most common mistakes that defensive backs make when they're playing. Number 1, we just talked about it, and that is a lack of proper technique in coverage. All right. A lot of times guys just try to go out there on their physical abilities. They put a lot of stock into how strong they are, how fast they are, their ability to jump, their quickness and all that. And they just want to go out there and play strictly off of their athleticism. That's fine. That might work for you in the young years when you're a youth football player. It might even work for you in high school, depending on where you are. But as you continue to progress and move through this game, you begin to face better wide receiver, better quarterbacks, better coaches. The fact that you don't have technique is going to now start to get exposed. As you start to go up against guys who might be close to or even better than you physically, they're faster, they're stronger, they're taller, whatever the case may be. If you don't have technique, you're going to be very inconsistent and you're not going to be able to cover those guys the way that you would need to and would like to cover them. So you are going to want to hone in on your technique. Maybe that's a boring part of the game for you. It really shouldn't be. If you're trying to go far, it needs to be a part of the game that you really, really care about. I tell my guys all the time in training that defensive back is made up of a lot of little small details. And the guys who really move far are the ones that really check those details. They are really into them, and it matters to them where their eyes are. And they really care about what their feet are doing. And they pay very close attention to what their hands are doing so that they can be on point. Consistency is the key when you are playing defensive back. All right. What do guys love Revis for? It just seemed like he was never out of coverage. He was never off balance. He was never too far away from a wide receiver. He was always there. Even when they caught the ball, he was really, really close. You knew what you were getting with a guy like Darrelle Revis each and every game, each and every rep, each and every series against each and every wide receiver. A certain amount of consistency, and that's what you want to develop. And the only way to get that is really by having tremendous technique. So as a defensive back, especially a corner, you need to really hone in and focus on your technique. The second biggest mistake that I see are guys having poor eye discipline. All right. And that can be not just in press, because I know that's the first thing you guys think about. Oh, he's talking about press coverage. No, it's just the one that seems to get the most highlighted, but that could happen in zone. Guys aren't reading the right thing. Now, your coach told you you're going to be reading number 2 in this particular coverage, and your eyes are wandering into the backfield. You're looking at the running back, or you're playing a zone and you're looking at the wide receiver right in front of you when you were told you need to read the number 2 wide receiver. Now that you're not reading the number 2 wide receiver, you're not getting the necessary clue that you need to get from that number 2 wide receiver, and you end up not covering the right guy, not being in the right zone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this all stems from a lack of eye discipline. Or, sometimes you're looking in the backfield too long if you're playing man-to-man coverage. You have to pay attention to where you are told your eyes need to be. When a coach starts telling you what your key is, dial in, lean in, write it down, pay attention to that, because your keys are where you win. Your coach is telling you what it is you need to look at to determine what play is coming your way. And if it's the number 2 receivers, have your eyes there. If he wants you reading the quarterback, have your eyes there. And what specifically does he want you to read off of the quarterback? The shoulders, the hand on the ball, whatever the case may be. Lock your eyes in on that. And of course, you need to do that when you're playing in man-to-man coverage. Is it the near hip? Is that where your coach wants you to look? Then have your eyes there and be super consistent and disciplined about where your eyes are, because that's a big part of what your success in playing both zone and man coverage. Ultimately, it's all for your success at playing defensive back for a number of things. Even in tackling, if your eyes are in the wrong place when you're tackling, you can get shook too. So every part of this game, especially for defensive backs, involves your eyes being in a specific place, and you should take very big notice and take pride in putting your eyes in the right place each and every time that you're going. Another thing that is a big problem, the number 3 thing that's a really big problem for defensive backs, is inadequate communication. So now you're playing zone and you need to communicate when you're playing in zone. As I say in the book, 101 DB tips, in zone, you cover with your mouth as opposed to, covering with your legs when you are in man-to-man. So there's a lot of pre-snap communication that needs to go on. You need to call out a formation. You may need to call out where a key player is. You also need to communicate when there's some kind of motion. So you need to be good with that kind of communication. And then when the ball is snapped, You need to have communication on what routes are coming. Do you need to call out China? Do you need to call out a smash route? Do you need to call a receiver that was in front of you in if he happens to be going in to alert your linebacker or the nickel back or the next guy inside that needs to pick that up? Do you need to do these things? You probably do. Anytime you're in a zone, you're going to need to be communicating those routes. I would urge you to get really good at that communication, both the pre-snap communication as well as the post-snap communication. And for you guys that are safeties, you definitely need to communicate. There's nothing worse than being a cornerback and having a safety on your side that's not good at talking. He's not good at giving you what the coverage call is. He's not good at giving you the checks when there's a motion or a formation change, and the guy has you out there just playing blind. You safeties need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to talk when there's motion. You need to be able to talk to let a cornerback or the guys on your side know what technique we're using, what coverage we're in, what checks we're making. You guys have got to get really good at communication. It's one of the things that I see that undo some DBs that are out there. All right. The number 4 mistake I see is overcommitting and getting beat deep. All right. I see guys doing this all of the time. All right. You should be able to maintain the proper depth. All right. And so, like, I'm going to give an example here. Cornerbacks in cover 3. All right. You need to maintain the proper depth in your zone. If you are a deep 1/3 player, you cannot be committing yourself to something shorter in your zone, overcommitting to something happening in front of you and allow a route to get behind you. A lot of what the offenses do are try to throw some eye candy. They're trying to put you in conflict. So they might run a guy on a curl right here in front of you, and then the number 2 receiver goes and runs a corner route behind you. All right. Or if you're a safety and you're supposed to be in the post, they might run an over route in front of your eyes, get you to slow down or go chase that, and then a post route is coming behind you. You cannot overcommit to routes that are happening in front of you if they're in an area where you are not primarily supposed to be. I see a lot of guys doing that. Again, it boils down to having eye discipline, but it also boils down to IQ. If you're a guy that's smart, you will understand what it is that I just told you. When a team's trying to get a post route behind you and you're a free safety, one of the biggest things to do is to try and run a guy at medium depth right in front of your eyes, get you to go jump up on that, take the bait, and then they run something behind you. They do it outside on the edges and the corners too, but you can't go over committing to routes that are not in your zone and you get beat deep. Sometimes you'll get beaten man to man, and that's a little bit easier for a coach to take than it is when you get beat deep in a zone when you were supposed to be deep in the zone. One of the reasons that coaches run zone defenses is to be a little bit more safe and not give up the big play. And when they decide to do that, and you, because you lacked discipline and you're overcommitting, give up the deep ball, you cannot be surprised when that coach pulls you off the field and has you on the bench. You got to have the discipline to remain where you need to be in your zone. That starts with you understanding where you're supposed to be in your zone, and then also understanding what the offense is trying to do to keep you out of those zones that you're supposed to be in. So the number 4 mistake is overcommitting and getting beat deep. You guys want to avoid that. And then the final part of this for our corners out there is sometimes you think this is not part of your responsibility, but you would be dead wrong if you said that, and that is tackling technique and physicality. All right. Everyone on the defense needs to be responsible for getting a ball carrier down on the ground. So for all of you coverage warriors out there that think you are just out there just to cover a guy, and if he doesn't catch a ball, you did your job today, you're wrong. Okay. And one of the big things that I've started to see, and one of the biggest changes from back in the day where you just had strictly covered corners who may not have to do much tackling, is offenses have gotten smarter and they will force you to tackle. If they notice that you are not a big-time tackler, you're not good at it, they're going to force you to tackle. And how do they do that? By running bubble screens and quick screens in front of you, or running toss plays where they block everybody else on the defense and they leave you out there by yourself to see if you really, really want to tackle. All right, for you safeties out there, you don't need me to tell you because you may have experienced this already, either in person or watching it happen to another guy. When we miss tackles at safety, that's where the big plays come. That's when the 50, 40, 60-yard touchdowns come. You have to be on your tackling technique. Now, no one says you have to be a killer tackler where you come and knock people's helmets off, but you got to be a solid tackler, a guy who knows how to wrap someone up in the open field and get them down. Or you got to be sometimes a guy that could take on a big back that's in a lane and it's just you and him there, and you need to get him to the ground, figure out how you're going to get him down. Maybe you're a banger. Maybe you're a tough guy. Maybe you could blow that guy backwards. Or you just need to be a guy that can wrap the legs up, get the guy down to the ground, and save the defense from the heartache, get us out of a mistake that may have happened, and give us another chance because now there's additional downs because you were able to make a tackle. Too many times I see young guys shying away from that or not paying enough attention to it. You have poor tackle technique, and you cannot get a guy down to the ground. So you keep getting a bubble screen, you keep getting quick screens in front of you. Sure, you'd like to cover routes down the field because that's where you think you're going to be able to make plays and make your interceptions. But since you don't want to tackle, they're not going to attack you down the field. They'll just throw those quick, short passes, have you miss a tackle, get 10 yards, get a first down, or worse, something bigger, 20, 25-yard gains. If you're an offense, why would you stop doing that? If a guy on the edge can't tackle, throw the football quick, get it into a playmaker's hands, whether a guy is shifty or a guy's really tough and he might run you over, and we'll just have the corner miss the tackle and just keep getting yards that way. Don't expect them to change from that. Don't expect them to start attacking what is your strength if you have this big glaring weakness that you have not taken care of. And of course, if you can start getting running backs into the secondary and the safeties can't tackle, guess what they're going to do, guys? They're going to keep running the football. So you're back there at safety, wanting them to throw the ball, wanting them to get the ball in the air so you can make some plays and some interceptions and put them all over your huddle highlights, or, you get them all over your YouTube highlights so you can be an All-American. If you're a college guy and you want to go play in the pros, guess what? You're going to have to be able to tackle in that run game. You're going to have to be able to tackle in that short passing game to get those deep passes that you want. So don't ignore the physicality and the tackling part of your game. So those are those 5 big common mistakes. Just to review really quick, the first is lacking proper technique and coverage. You want to make sure that you are on point with your technique. The second is having poor eye discipline. Eye discipline is just about everything as a defensive back. So when your coach tells you where your eyes need to be, make it a point to have them there each and every time that you are out on the field and the ball is snapped. Number 3 is inadequate communication. Don't be a silent movie out there. Be able to talk both pre and post snap to communicate to the guys around you so everyone is in position to make a play. Number 4 is overcommitting and getting beat deep. Have some discipline in your game. Don't go taking the eye candy and the bait. That comes from you understanding the defense and where you need to be, and understanding the offense and what it is they're trying to do to you, so you don't overcommit and get beat deep, most primarily in zones, but sometimes this can happen to you in man-to-man as well. Don't be a guy that overcommits. And then finally is your tackling technique and your toughness, your physicality. Football is a physical game, and no one really gets to get away from that, including my corners and my safeties. Be a guy who has really good tackling technique and can get ball carriers down on the ground. That is the essence of winning defense. We are going to force them into the plays that we want to see. All right, let's stay away from those 5 common mistakes. But one thing I don't need you to stay away from is the Indy Drills podcast. So again, on my way out here, I would urge you guys to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're, watching this on YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast if you're streaming this and listening to it, so you don't miss out on the next one. Also, a couple of resources for you. I already talked about the book, 101 DB Tips, chock full of a whole bunch of information in there that's going to level up your game. If you can't get to me in person for training sessions, this is the next best thing. Everything on how to play corner, how to play safety, how to play nickelback, how to train in the off season, how to watch film, know what the offenses are trying to do to you, how to play coverages. Just about everything you'll ever need to play defensive back is well described and explained in this book, 101 DB Tips. You can get it in the soft cover version like I just shown you right here, okay? We also have in version 2, 100 passing terms that you need to know, all right? No more opening the playbook and seeing words in there that you don't understand. I've got 100 great passing terms in there for you, as well as a page for taking notes. That's if you get the softback version. Or you can get the ebook version delivered to you immediately when you order it. It'll get right there. You can look at the book on your phone, iPad, whatever the case may be. Hit the link in the description down below. And then there's also the All Eyes DB Camp members area, where I have over 200 videos and posts in there on coverages explained, defensive back strategy, I break down coverage technique. So if I talked about technique here, you can improve technique there, showing you what wins, shows you some mistakes that guys make in there. We have discussions. I do lives in there. I take polls. And one of the best things that guys really, really love in there is I have quizzes on coverages in there. Come in there, take the quizzes, improve your IQ so that you are running in the light this year. So either one of those, or if you're really trying to be an All-American and be big time this year, you get the book and you join the All Eyes DB Camp members area. There's no way you're not a killer DB this year coming up. You can get yourself off the bench and onto the field. You can get yourself from on the field into All-American and just stuff your inbox with offers from college coaches because you have acquired this kind of knowledge with your physical training in the off season. All right. That's enough for me, guys. I'm out of here. I appreciate you guys checking in and watching this edition of the Indy Drills podcast. Looking forward to doing more with you. And I'm out. All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.